Niall, talk to me about succession planning.
Succession planning is hugely important in family businesses to continue to prosper and develop and transition through a number of generations. Their main problem can tend to be the willingness of the founder of the business to engage in the process. And that is partly the reason why historically businesses don't successfully transition from one generation to the next. In Western Europe and in the States, it's on average about only 1/3 of businesses transition successfully to the next generation. So from that perspective, there's a significant fall off in the number of businesses that aren't successfully transitioned. And that can partly be because of the myriad of issues that face the founder and in effect bottoming out on all those issues and addressing them appropriately. By way of analysis as to the overall process and what someone should consider is firstly establishing goals, what personal goals and also goals for the business. What's it anticipate? Do you expect the business? What level do you expect the business to grow to? Do you plan to keep it in the family, or do you propose to sell it in the future? Personal goals would include a time frame over which you may reduce your involvement in the business and considering passing it to family members. With that, you should consider a business strategy assessment. Where is the business at now? Where will it be at in the future? And that will also is quite important from a point of view of management transition and ensuring that incoming management know what's involved, what will continue to be involved, and there's a continuity of process from a management perspective. Coupled with that is managing talent. Have you got the right individuals employed in the business to take over, be they family members, or if family members you feel aren't appropriate or don't have the relevant skill sets, will existing non-family management take control after you cease to be involved at a management level, or alternatively do you need to actually get people in, and with that then you have to really manage the information flow and communications with the family, because family members may have expectations and you need to manage those expectations, particularly if you don't feel they're suitable for running the business going forward.
I was going to ask you that. How do you deal with you find that your son or daughter is not suitable in taking over the business? What do we do? Because I presume that's a minefield.
That is a minefield, and you've got two competing issues. You've got the business criteria, what's right for the business on one side, and the family criteria. Normally family criteria might consider, take care of your children, employ them in the business, but if they're not suitable for being involved in the business, that is to the detriment of the business. Yeah. So ultimately, if the business represents a significant family asset or is the main source of family wealth, having a family member involved in it who is entirely unsuitable to running it will ultimately be to the detriment of the business. So it is for the benefit of the child in their development to actually communicate to them appropriately that they may not be suited, or that their role is limited to a certain role and that other people will have other roles. Because particularly I think where you've more than one family member in the business, you've got huge potential for conflict. If you've two children employed in the business and they're both paid the same, yet one child is a very high performer and one child isn't a high performer, either particularly the child who's a high performer might get disgruntled because they particularly might feel, well, here I am and I'm getting paid as the same as the other person who isn't performing. So ultimately a business should be run as a business. Family requirements shouldn't really come into it, and that ultimately is for the benefit of family in the long term as well.
Okay. Any other issues, because I interrupted you?
Oh yes, but I suppose apart from the communication piece, you should have an estate plan in place, such as if you pass away, what will happen to the business in the case of your demise, and that's important. But it shouldn't. People occasionally tend to focus on succession planning as being an estate plan or just purely ownership transition. It involves other issues in connection with management transition. It also involves issues around looking at your overall wealth position and your position as regards retirement. Is most of the family wealth represented by the interest in the business? Are there investment assets held by the business that you could extract personally? Yeah. And that's quite important to make sure that you and your spouse have adequate resources in retirement, particularly if you're then gifting the business to other family members. Coupled with that, having a knowledge of what your business is worth. So looking at the corporate finance requirements, what are the financing requirements for the business going forward? Will there be acquisitions or disposals of business assets into the future, and how will that impact on the overall business and the shape it will be in and when you pass it to the next generation? Outside of that, that'll feed into corporate structuring, and the overall tax and commercial requirements of the business. And ultimately then, if passing it to family members, issues like shareholders agreements, where you're going to have more than one family member involved, having dispute resolution mechanisms is quite important. And then finally, the overall issues around as we partly touched on, where there's more than one family member involved, compensation, particularly then if professional management, will they feel prejudiced if there's family members involved? They might see that the opportunity for promotion for them might be limited where you've got family involved. And then finally, your own retirement plan. What's your involvement or attachment going to be to the business going forward? And I suppose looking at it, in asking, I suppose, the questions you should ask yourself at a very straightforward basic level would be, will you be financially secure in retirement? What ultimately are the requirements of the business and what's important for the business? Should family be involved in the business? And then finally, are you willing to let go, and what will be your role in the business going forward?